This mistake almost killed my career. I've made a lot of mistakes on YouTube, like hundreds, but this one, this is a big one. And it's more like a series of escalating mishaps, which I'm going to share with you because if you've ever considered jumping onto this platform, then you need to do not this. But this mistake's name is Team Pokemart, a little known YouTube channel of mine that was actually my third channel created after Grand Line Review and New World Review. And the general premise was to be a Pokemon exclusive channel focusing on a disgruntled Pokemon employee, explaining the world of Pokemon in a dry, sarcastic manner. It was meant to be a bright, fresh, fun experiment where I had all sorts of assets made up and even an animated intro. And I chose to do this because at this point, both Grand Line Review and New World Review had taken off. They were bringing in very consistent audiences, consistent growth, and all of the good stuff. And so I thought, why not do this again? Here's why you don't do it again. Like seriously, if time travel is a thing and Parsleyum is listening to this video, please heed my advice. I should say that the channel started out pretty well. Thanks to the wonders of cross promotion, I told my existing audience about it and we pretty much smashed out 10,000 subscribers within a week. At which point I thought, damn, I must be on something. This Pokemon thing could be big. However, almost immediately after the initial boom, views and subscribers came to a screeching halt. It was still growing, but it was growing at the pace of, watching paint dry, which I've been told is very slow. I've never tried it myself. It could be really fast. But fast is not what I was doing. And in retrospect, this was due to 3 major problems and one major problem. Like we are talking about the king of problems here who decided to grace me with his presence. And you never want to be in His Majesty's general vicinity. First issue, basic marketing 101. So basic that it's painful. But this channel had no target audience. I didn't even stop for a second to consider who these videos were for. And this is because I'd honestly gotten very lucky with my first channel, Grand Line Review. I made One Piece videos in a specific format because that's what I personally wanted to see. And as it turned out, so did hundreds of thousands of people who crave that kind of content. The target market was me, and in that case, it turned out that there were a lot of me's. Team Pokemon, however, was the exact opposite. The target market, again, was me. However, as it turned out, there weren't a lot of me. What I really needed to do was analyze the Pokemon space far better, because when it comes to Pokemon content, it generally falls into one of 3 sub-niches. You've got those who talk about the anime, those who talk about or play the games, and then there's also the trading card game, which is a smaller niche compared to the first 2, but a solid one nonetheless. And this channel did none of those things. So it immediately held dubious value to those who were interested in Pokemon because it didn't cover the anime, the games, or the TCG. It was a weird kind of informative comedy show aimed at the nostalgia of people like me in their 30s. The jokes were quite adult oriented and not friendly to the core audience of Pokemon, who at all points in human history have traditionally been children and teenagers. So I really stacked things against myself right from the get-go by not appealing to the core Pokemon fan base. So this is very much an example of when niche goes too niche. Something so specific and unique that it kind of misses the point of why Pokemon was so popular and beloved to begin with. Now speaking of, second issue now, Pokemon is an oversaturated market. It is quite literally the most successful franchise in human history, which I knew at the time, and that was part of the appeal. Naturally, you'd think, man, there are so many eyes on Pokemon that I could just grab a piece of that. But there are so many Pokemon creators on YouTube that it's hard to break through that iron fortress. As opposed to, again, One Piece. Compared to Pokemon, nobody is making One Piece content, even to this day. I would say there are less than 10 established big channels that have a focus on One Piece, and even less when I first got into it. But that makes breaking into that area a much easier task, because your audiences will cycle through that handful of channels, and eventually they will probably land on checking out yours. With Pokemon, however, you've got literally hundreds of established creators. So many so that it completely smothers you and drowns out your chances of natural discovery. Like to truly break through, you would probably need a shout out on someone else's channel or something along those lines to penetrate that sphere. Third problem, I suck. Specifically with thumbnails and titles on Team Pokemon. At the time, I had a very popular series called One Piece 101 on Grand Line Review, which took characters and summarized them in an easily digestible amount of time. And the general idea was to do that same thing for Pokemon as well. So I ended up going with the title format of, say, the Bulbasaur line explained, which in retrospect is pretty much the most boring title in the world, and not at all representative of what these videos were. Like these videos, they were less information and more akin to sketch comedy. Goofy explorations of Pokemon from a Pokemon employee who was beyond dissatisfied with his job and in fact this world in general. There were recurring characters, storylines, locations, and all that sort of stuff. None of which you would ever be able to tell from those boring as crap titles. What you'd expect is probably a very informative video about whatever Pokemon it was, maybe going through their advantages in game or something like that. But instead what you got was a rambling sprite. So the titles didn't draw draw the intended audience, and those that click probably didn't get what they wanted. In fact, I know they didn't because they stopped clicking. The titles and thumbnails needed to be something more outrageous and over the top, which is all good and well for me to realize now, but there's a good question. Why didn't I just do that back then? Well, that leads into our major problem, the one that almost killed my entire career, which is production. With Team Pokemon, I think it's safe to say that I bit off a little bit more than I could chew, because what I wanted to do was replicate the Grand Line Review and New World Review formula, which had a schedule of 4 videos and 3 videos a week respectively. So I wanted Team Pokemon to be pumping out at least 3 videos right off the bat. And that was a bad idea, very bad idea. Because in total, it now meant that I was writing 10 full videos a week, a video being anywhere from 2,300 to 2,500 words on average. Some are much more, none of them are less. So like a full-length essay at least once a day, but so that is like a full-length essay at least once a day, but 3 times a week, twice a day, because that is how we get to the number 10. In addition to that, I was still editing all of my videos for the first 2 channels. And the one intelligent move I did make was deciding that I needed to hire editors for Team Pokemon, because it just was not humanly possible for me to take on that entire load. That's what she said, etc. There's a joke there. But still, that is editing 7 videos a week, and on top of that, I still needed to do titles and thumbnails for all 10. And they look small and easy, but they take up a lot of time. And I'm exhausted just thinking about it. So that's why the titles and thumbnails honestly sucked beyond belief, because I didn't have the time to think about how to make them good, which is a problem because they are the most important part of a video, more so than the content itself, kind of sadly. You know, it's actually scary just how much more important they are. And this had a big knock-on effect, because not only did I not have the time to make Team Pokemon what it should have been, but I also had to start cutting corners on Grand Line Review and New World Review as well. So less time went into those other 7 videos a week, which eventually I saw was having quite a negative impact. And so to avert complete catastrophe, I suddenly had to pull the plug on Team Pokemon because its very existence was threatening everything that I and my existing audience had built up to that point. And then after I stopped work on Team Pokemon, I threw all of my time into focusing on Grand Line Review and how to not only lead it into recovery, but also ideally into some sort of prosperity. And that worked quite well because it's been about a year since I made that decision and the channel has now doubled its average view count. But if I was stubborn and had stuck to Team Pokemon, then I have no doubt that all 3 channels would be stagnant at the very least and in decline at the very worst. Because on YouTube, there is no stagnation. You're either growing or you're declining, which is the sickening pressure of the YouTube beast. Because YouTube will not promote a stagnant channel, so it just immediately skips that step and you just fall into decline. However, another very handy thing that came from this experience was the editors, because I moved one of them over to Grand Line Review and the other over to New World Review, and they were instrumental in helping me grow those channels. So it's not all bad. Team Pokemon was the gateway to meeting them, so that's nice. I'm also not unconvinced that Team Pokemon never would have been successful under any circumstance. I think that I was just too inexperienced and at the time too strapped for time to lead it there. Because the videos are fun, they're quirky, they're entertaining, and quite addictive for the small audience they did attract. I just really needed to think a lot harder about how to make them appealing for a more adult Pokemon audience. One change I would probably make is to choose an area to focus the channel on, either the anime, the games, or the TCG, just to give the channel an acceptable sub-niche that might naturally be recommended from similar spaces. What that choice is, I mean, it's probably not the games or the TCG because I just don't know enough about them, which leaves us with the anime, and I guess that could work because I'd done that twice before, base a channel around a particular anime. But something I haven't mentioned, and this is very important, but it's that my Pokemon knowledge in general just was not anywhere near as solid as One Piece or Hunter x Hunter. So when writing, it took a lot longer to research, and it took a lot longer because what I was writing was primarily comedy. So that was like a double whammy of badness, and the lesson here, I suppose, being that when you start a channel, don't try to do it the way I tried to do it here, where I took something that I was vaguely interested in but knew it was super popular. But if you don't have an overwhelming, burning passion for that topic, then it's going to take you a lot longer than it should to produce, and the results are never going to be able to compare to someone who does have that passion. And I like Pokemon, I really like Pokemon, but I have to say that passion was definitely missing with me. Again though, I think a channel like this could work. It needs a solid strategy to break through to people, taking advantage of an existing sub-niche, but if I personally was to do it again, I would need a producer, someone who lives and breathes Pokemon, and someone who understands the fan base better than I ever will. And I suppose basically just using me as a vehicle for that passion. But at that point, it really should just be the other person's channel instead of mine, so I don't know. Another benefit I did get was the sink or swim introduction to comedy writing, which I've since injected more into Grand Line Review and New World Review, which I do think has seriously enhanced those videos because they used to be quite dry discussions, whereas I prefer them moist now, very, very moist. Here's a big thing though. Killing myself with production also taught me for the very first time where my natural limits were, which is nice because I have a better grasp of the time and energy needs for new projects, like say Dude in a Room for example. I knew that something like this was possible because I deliberately had to think about how to make videos in the most raw and utilitarian ways. So for example, right now a finished video on this channel takes about 3 hours. 1 hour for writing, 1 hour for editing, half an hour to record, and half an hour to make the thumbnail. All of which are very strict limits that I need to enforce with this dramatic bomb timer, because if I don't, I will end up team Pokemarting myself again. With that said, thank you to everyone who did enjoy and support the channel if there are any of you watching. I do hope that Team Pokemart was able to make your life a bit more fun for 10 minutes at a time. I did genuinely enjoy making stuff for you and reading the comments, but I'm afraid that like the vast majority of romances, it just wasn't meant to be.